Alina Vasquez pressed her translation earpiece deeper into her ear, though she didn't really need to. The Galactic Council chamber's acoustics were perfect. And after 5 years working here, she could understand half the alien languages without technological help. But today, she needed something to hold on to. Something to anchor her as the galaxy voted to destroy everything humanity built among the stars. The vegan delegate's crystalline form pulsed with red light. Through her earpiece, Alina heard the translation, guilty. She kept her face neutral, professional. That's what they paid her for, to be the calm human face in the room. To translate without emotion, to make the other species forget that she was one of the accused. Her fingers moved automatically across her datapad, logging the vote. Even though every instinct screamed at her to stand up and fight, the Zephyrin delegate raised 3 of his 4 arms in the gesture Alina had learned meant condemnation. Guilty. Beside her in the translator's gallery, her colleague Thomas gripped the railing so hard his knuckles turned white. Alina wanted to reach over to comfort him, but she couldn't. Not here. Not when thousands of beings watched humanity's representatives for any sign of the ND aggression they'd been accused of. One by one, the votes fell like hammer blows. The Aquarian Collective, whose water-world cities used human atmospheric processors, voted guilty. The Verdanian forest dwellers, whose plague humanity had helped cure 3 years ago, voted guilty. Even the small mining colonies that humanity had defended from raiders voted the same way. Elena's throat tightened. She had translated for these beings, shared meals with some of them, learned their languages, their customs, their jokes. And now they were sending her people into exile. The vote was unanimous. 212 species, all agreeing that humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too much to remain in galactic space. The council speaker, a being of pure light that Alina had never quite figured out how to describe to her family back on Earth, announced the terms. 6 months. Remove all human presence from council space. Permanent exile. Alina translated the words, her voice steady, even as her heart broke. This was her job. This was what she had trained for. But nothing had prepared her for this. When the session ended, she remained in her seat as the chamber emptied. Other translators filed out, some crying, some angry. Thomas stopped beside her. "Alina, we should go," he said softly. In a minute, she needed to sit here. In this beautiful chamber with its floating lights and impossible architecture, and remember what it felt like to be welcome among the stars. In 6 months, no human would stand in this room again. The chamber was nearly empty when she heard footsteps, or rather, the soft rustle that passed for footsteps among the Verdanians. Alina looked up to find a plant-like being approaching her station. She recognized him immediately. Joran, one of the xenobotanists who worked in the Council's environmental division. "Translator Vasquez," he said in flawless English. His voice always surprised her, melodic and warm. Nothing like the creaking of wood she'd expected when she first met him. "I wanted to apologize." Alina stood, professional mask sliding back into place. "You don't need to apologize for your government's vote. Not for the vote." His leaves rustled, and what she'd learned was embarrassment. For all of it? This isn't right." Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. Joran stood almost 7 feet tall, his body a complex network of vines and branches that somehow formed a humanoid shape. Clusters of small flowers bloomed where a human might have hair. And his face, while alien, held an expression she couldn't mistake. "Genuine distress? You opposed the vote?" she asked quietly. "Many of us did. But we don't. My people don't work that way. We seek consensus." And the fear was too strong. His flowers drooped. "I'm sorry. I know that's not enough." Lena felt something crack in her chest. She'd been so focused on staying professional, on not showing weakness, she'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone simply acknowledge her pain. "Thank you," she whispered. For saying it, they stood in silence for a moment. Around them, the chamber's lights began to dim as automated systems prepared for the next session tomorrow. Tomorrow, when they'd discuss how to divide up human territory, how to redistribute human resources, how to fill the gap humanity would leave. "What will you do?" Joran asked. After the evacuation? Alina hadn't let herself think about it. I don't know. Earth is so crowded now. I haven't lived there since I was 18. She gestured at the chamber. This was my home. I've seen your file, Joran said, then quickly added professionally. You've translated for 37 different species. You speak 14 languages fluently. You've prevented 6 diplomatic incidents and helped negotiate the Proxima peace accords. None of that matters now. It matters to me. Alina looked at him sharply. There was something in his voice she couldn't quite identify. Not pity. Something else. Something that made her heart beat faster. Why? She asked. Joran's flowers shifted color slightly, darkening to a deeper purple. Because I've been coming to your translation sessions for 2 years? Because you laugh at the Rigelian delegates' terrible jokes, even though you think no one notices? Because you stay late to help the young Zephyrin clerks with their English? Because you make this place feel less like a bureaucracy and more like somewhere beautiful? Alina felt heat rising to her cheeks. She'd noticed Joran too, of course. Had looked forward to seeing him in the gallery during her shifts. Had even learned a few phrases in Verdanian badly pronounced. She was sure, just in case they ever had a chance to speak. That's very kind, she said carefully. But in 6 months, 6 months is a long time. 6 months is nothing. Then let's not waste it. Alina stared at him. The smart thing, the professional thing, would be to walk away. She had so much to do. Forms to file, protocols to follow, her own evacuation to plan. Getting emotionally involved with an alien whose government had just voted to exile. Her entire species was foolish at best. But when Joran extended one vine-like hand toward her, she took it. His touch was warm, like sun-heated bark. His fingers, she supposed they were fingers intertwined with hers carefully, as if he was afraid of hurting her. There's a garden, he said softly. On the observation deck? It's quiet this time of day. Would you like to see it? Alina knew she should say no. Should go back to her quarters and start packing. Should distance herself from this place and these people who had rejected her kind instead. She squeezed his hand gently and said, Yes, I'd like that very much. As they walked out of the chamber together, Alina couldn't help but feel that something unexpected had just begun. Something fragile and probably doomed, but real nonetheless. The galaxy might be ending for humanity. But in this moment, walking hand in hand with a being from another world, Alina felt more alive than she had in years. Behind them, the chamber lights went dark. Marcus Webb had never imagined that saying goodbye to dirt could hurt this much. He stood at the edge of Section 7, watching the massive excavators scoop up another load of rich, dark soil. The machines moved with surprising delicacy, their human-designed systems carefully preserving every microbe, every earthworm, every precious bit of organic matter that made this planet's farms the most productive in 3 sectors. Harvest 7 had been his home for 8 years. He'd arrived as a junior agricultural tech and worked his way up to coordinating the terraforming of an entire continent. These fields had been bare rock when he started. Now they grew wheat and corn and vegetables that fed 15 worlds, or they had until 3 months ago. The south orchards are ready for extraction. His assistant's voice crackled over the cum. Should we begin? Marcus looked toward the apple trees he'd planted with his own hands 5 years ago. They were finally mature, finally producing the crisp, perfect fruit he'd dreamed of. Last harvest, they'd shipped 10,000 tons to stations across the sector. This harvest, they were ripping the trees out by their roots. Begin extraction, he said, his voice rough. He turned away from the excavators and nearly collided with someone. Not someone something. A Rigelian, her scaled form shimmering in the afternoon light, a data tablet clutched in her clawed hands. Sorry, Marcus, said automatically, then paused. You're not supposed to be in this sector. It's restricted during extraction. I know. Her voice came through a translator collar, warm and feminine despite the mechanical quality. I'm Sarah, environmental observer from the Council. I'm here too. To document the process, Her tone suggested she wasn't happy about her assignment. Marcus studied her more carefully. Rigilians were reptilian in appearance, with elegant scales that shifted colors based on their emotions. Right now, Syrah's scales flickered between blue and green sadness and distress. If he remembered his xenobiology training correctly, "Well, you picked a hell of a day to observe," Marcus said. "We're about to destroy an orchard. I thought you were preserving it. Taking it with you. Same difference. Those trees have been growing here for 5 years. They know this soil, this sun, this rain. Ripping them out and putting them in stasis." He shook his head. "It's killing them, even if they'll technically be alive when we plant them again on Earth." Syrah's scales rippled with deeper blue. "I'm sorry." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Everyone's sorry. Your council voted for this." "I didn't," looked at her sharply. "What?" "I was there. In the gallery, watching the vote? I was one of 17 Rigelian scientists who petitioned our government to vote against the exile." Her scales darkened almost to purple. "They ignored us. Said we were too young to understand the bigger picture." Marcus felt his anger deflate slightly. "How old are you?" 26 in your years. Too young to be taken seriously, apparently." She gestured at the fields around them. "They sent me here to observe the evacuation, to make sure humans weren't damaging planetary ecosystems." As if, she trailed off, her scales flashing with colors Marcus couldn't interpret. "As if we're the ones doing the damaging." Marcus finished. "Yes." They stood in uncomfortable silence, watching the excavators work. Marcus found himself studying Syrah from the corner of his eye. She was smaller than most Rigilians he'd met, maybe 5.5 feet tall, with scales that caught the light like opals. She held herself with careful precision, as if afraid to take up too much space. "Do you want to save some of them?" Marcus asked suddenly. Syrah's head tilted, a gesture he'd learned meant curiosity. "Save what?" "The trees. Not all of them we're taking most. But there are a few saplings we were going to leave behind. Too young to survive the stasis process." Surprised himself with his next words. "You could take them. Plant them somewhere. Make sure something human survives here." Her scales rippled with gold joy, he thought. "You would do that?" "I'd rather they live with someone who cares than die in storage." Without thinking it through, Marcus led her toward the nursery greenhouse. Inside, rows of young saplings waited in their pots, too small to make the journey home. He'd been planning to compost them tomorrow. The thought had kept him awake last night. "These are apple trees," he explained, touching one delicate leaf. "This variety took 3 years to develop. They're resistant to scale blight and can grow in almost any soil. These over here are cherry trees. And these," he moved to another section. "These are from Earth. Real Earth trees. Grown from seeds my grandmother sent me. Oak, maple, birch." Syrah moved among the saplings with reverence, her claws gentle as she examined each one. "They're beautiful. They're orphans now." She looked up at him, and Marcus was struck by her eyes, large and golden, nothing like human eyes, but somehow conveying the same depth of feeling. "I have a garden," Syrah said softly. "On Rigel 4. It's small, but the climate is temperate. Similar to this." She touched an apple sapling. I could give them a home. All of them, that's at least 50 trees, and I'll build a bigger garden." Something in Marcus's chest loosened. He'd been so focused on the destruction, on everything humanity was losing, that he'd forgotten things could also be preserved, given new life in unexpected places. "I'll help you pack them properly," he said. "Show you how to care for them." "They're fussy about water and teach me," Syrah interrupted. "Don't just tell me. Teach me, please." Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus found himself spending more time with Syrah than he'd planned. She came to the nursery every day, arriving early and staying late. He taught her about soil pH and proper pruning techniques. She showed him Rigelian agricultural methods that had sustained her people for millennia. They talked while they worked, their conversations ranging from farming techniques to music to the foods they missed from home. Syrah had never tried coffee. Marcus had never tasted the fermented algae drink Rigelians considered a delicacy. They laughed about the cultural differences, the misunderstandings, the strangeness of finding common ground across species one evening. As the sun set over the fields, they sat together in the nursery. Surrounded by the saplings they'd been preparing for transport. "I don't want you to leave," Sierra said suddenly. Marcus felt his heart skip. He'd been trying not to acknowledge the feeling growing between them. It was ridiculous, impossible. She was an alien. Her people had voted to exile his, and in 3 months, he'd be gone forever. But when she looked at him with those golden eyes, none of that seemed to matter. "I don't want to leave either," he admitted. "Not anymore." Sierra's scales shifted to rose gold, a color he'd never seen on her before. "What does that color mean?" he asked. "Affection," she said quietly. "Among Rigelians it means the heart is engaged." Marcus reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he let his hand rest on her scaled arm. Her skin was warm, the scales smooth under his palm. "My heart is engaged too," he said, "even though it's probably the stupidest thing I've ever felt." "Right." "Why stupid?" "Because in 3 months, I'll be on Earth, and you'll be here, and there won't be any jump gates. Travel between our worlds will take years, not hours. We'll never see each other again." Sierra moved closer until they were sitting shoulder to shoulder. Her scales felt like warm glass against his arm. "My people have a saying," she said. "The sun sets every night, but we don't stop planting seeds because of darkness. We plant them for the dawn." "What does that mean?" "It means 3 months is enough time to fall in love. And love doesn't end just because 2 people are separated by distance." She turned to face him fully. "I'm going to plant these trees. Every single one. And I'm going to care for them the way you taught me. And every time I see them bloom, I'll think of you. That's not nothing, Marcus. That's not stupid." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He'd been so angry about the exile, so focused on what humanity was losing, that he'd forgotten they could leave something beautiful behind. Not just the trees, though those mattered, but this connection. This proof that different species could understand each other, could care for each other, even when their governments failed. "I'm going to find a way back," he said fiercely. "I don't know how, but someday, when Earth figures out faster than light travel without the gates, or when the Council changes their minds, or when hell freezes over, I'm going to find a way back to you." Sierra's scales blazed rose gold. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his Rigelian gesture of deep affection he'd learned. "Then I'll wait," she whispered. "Under the apple trees, I'll wait for you." They sat together in the greenhouse as darkness fell, surrounded by the plants they'd saved together. Outside, the excavators continued their work, tearing up the fields Marcus had spent years perfecting. But inside, in this small space, something was being preserved that mattered just as much. Love, Marcus thought, was a lot like planting seeds. You put something small and fragile into the ground, not knowing if it would survive. But you had faith. You watered it, cared for it, believed in it, and sometimes, despite all odds, it bloomed. When Marcus finally said goodbye to Harvest 7 6 weeks later, Sierra stood at the spaceport with 50 saplings carefully packed for transport to her homeworld. They'd shared one last night together, talking until dawn about everything and nothing, making promises they both knew might be impossible to keep, but making them anyway. As his transport lifted off, Marcus looked down at the planet one last time. The fields were bare now, scraped clean down to bedrock. But somewhere below, Sierra was already preparing soil for her new garden. The seeds of their impossible love taking root across the stars. It wasn't the ending he'd wanted, but it was a beginning nonetheless.